welcome Professor Sharma on our show. Today you are going to talk about what was Mahatma Gandhi trying to achieve. I'm very excited to be here with you today, and I think our viewers too, in order to learn about Gandhi and his incredible legacy. Welcome, Professor Sharma.
Thank you.
So, can you first and foremost lay out to us what Mahatma Gandhi's goal was, and do you think his goal can be described as for today, as almost fulfilled? What do you think if you look at contemporary times?
Yeah, that's a very good setting for the question. So the question is, what was Mahatma Gandhi trying to achieve? Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to speak for about half an hour, and then we'll have questions at the end of that. And in that half hour, what I would like to accomplish is basically to suggest various goals which one could apparently find as goals set by Mahatma Gandhi for himself, like the achievement of Indian independence, like the abolition of untouchability, and so on, or removal of injustices against women, and so on. And then I would try from that to describe my own perception of what he was really trying to achieve. And once I have done that, we can have questions querying what I have said. Okay, so when we look at the checkered life of Mahatma Gandhi, we can suggest several goals which he was trying to achieve. For instance, in India, Mahatma Gandhi is usually revered as the person who brought us independence. He entered the political scene in India around 1920, after his return from South Africa. He launched a major movement against the British in the early 1920s, then again in the early 1930s, and then in 1942, in the middle of the Second World War. And finally, the British left in 1947. The last British Viceroy of India, Lord Mountbatten, openly declared Mahatma Gandhi to be the architect of India's independence. There are popular songs in India which compliment Mahatma Gandhi for having helped us achieve independence, and also without firing a bullet. A very popular song says that saint from Sabarmati is the name of a river in India, where he had one of his ashrams or hermitages. That saint of Sabarmati, who brought us independence without a shield and without a sword. That is, without fighting for it violently. And this is how he is depicted in many history books. So, one very plausible achievement of Mahatma Gandhi, what was he trying to accomplish? He was trying to achieve India's independence. And without doubt, this has certain persuasive power, this particular line of logic. But the point I want to make is a statement by Mahatma Gandhi that if India's independence was to be achieved by violent means, he has no interest in it. In other words, his main goal was not the achievement of India's independence. His main goal was the achievement of India's independence by non-violent means, to such an extent that I think it was around 1934 that he resigned from the membership of the very organization which he had really converted into a mass movement, into the vanguard of a mass movement, the Congress Party, the Indian National Congress as it was formerly called. He resigned from the membership on the ground that he now realizes that people accepted his goal of non-violent struggle against the British, not on principle, but as expedient. What did he mean by that? Indians realized that the British have the greatest empire in the world. They have a British army, which has a stellar record of success. The British had disarmed India, so there was no hope of driving the British away by using violent means. And therefore they accepted Mahatma Gandhi's policy of non-violence. This disappointed Mahatma Gandhi because he wanted his policies to be accepted in principle and not on the basis of expediency. So he wasn't a formal member of the Congress after that. So what I'm trying to say is that he wanted to achieve Indian independence yet, but only through non-violent means. Then you might say that another great achievement of Mahatma Gandhi was the abolition of untouchability. What was untouchability? It was a practice in India which segregated a section of society from the rest of society because they pursued a profession which the rest of the society considered impure. Dealing with dead animals, scavenging, disposal of human, what is called night soil in India, or human excreta, etc. And people thought that touching them or eating food touched by them would pollute them. So they were kept segregated. Mahatma Gandhi insisted they are human beings as other human beings. And therefore this practice should be abolished. Now in this, just as his move for achieving independence was opposed by the British and some Indians even, his move to abolish untouchability was opposed by an untouchability leader, the leader of the untouchables, rather I should say, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Dr. Ambedkar wanted to use legislation and political processes to achieve this goal. Gandhi felt that politics is a form of coercion. After all, a government is the sole authority in a society which reserves the right to coerce people by passing laws. So Gandhi was opposed to these means of achieving it. He wanted a transformation of heart on the part of the Hindus who discriminated against the untouchables. That is, non-violent means. So even a cause so dear to his heart as the abolition of untouchability, he wanted it to be brought about. He even risked his life for it, but by non-violent means. And we will find this if we turn to other achievements of Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi was a great emancipator of women. People often don't realize this because you also idealize their role as mother and as housekeeper. His language was not feminist in the modern sense, but the results were. When he launched his famous Salt March, in which in the end 80,000 people were imprisoned, 18,000 of them were women. 17,000 were arrested on the first day. So a person who can bring women traditionally confined to the household in a public protest like this has achieved, from the point of view of observers of the Indian scene, almost a miracle. But how did he do it? Not by being strident, not by giving a battle cry, but by actually doing things which resulted in this transformation, empowering women. So whichever achievement of his we will turn to, we will find that it was rooted in nonviolence. So now I come to the second part of my presentation. Why was Gandhi so insistent on nonviolence? This is the question we have to ask and answer. To get an answer to our question, what made him tick? Now, in order for us to understand what Gandhi was trying to achieve, in my view, we will have to digress here. And the digression might appear initially almost irrelevant to my talk. So I would just say to the audience, please bear with me. We will discover its relevance before too long. I would like to begin by asking a question. Suppose you are sitting in your home in Montreal with your family and children, wife and children, that is with your family. Somebody bursts into the room and shoots down your children. Some terrorist. Somehow you manage to gain control over him, subdue him. What will you do next? And you even have weapons in your room. What I'm trying to say is, he has killed your children. You are now in complete control over his future at the moment, whether he lives or dies. He has been subdued, and you have the weapons to kill him. This is the situation. What will you do as a citizen of Canada or Quebec or Montreal? I've asked this question in several fora. And in the end, the majority, if not everybody, agrees that they will call the police and hand him over to the police. Now, my question at this point is, why? Is it not quite apparent that he has just killed your children? What more proof do you need? You have the weapons. You have the criminal. You have the motivation. You can say either that you are going to do justice to the situation or that you are getting your revenge. I would just like to add here that according to Gandhi, to seek revenge is to become unjust in the pursuit of justice. So just let's talk about justice. Why don't you kill him? What could be more logical, rational, ethical, legal? But you won't? Why? Because, well, before I say that, why? Please imagine the degree of socialization we have undergone. That's such an instinctive reaction to kill the intruder when it is fully justified. Is prevented from coming into operation by our socialization. And we call the police and hand him over. Why? Because humanity has learned the hard way that it is better to live in a society characterized by law and order than in a society suffering from the chaos of revenge taking. And that is why we have been socialized in this way. I'm going to thicken the plot now. Suppose he is in the custody of the police, but he is able to make an escape. Will you not feel cheated? Will you not feel now justified in tracking him down and shooting him dead? No. Even then you will not do it. Just please consider this. And let me thicken it further. Suppose he is let off by the court because of some legal technicality. I don't know what they are called in Canada, but in America at one time they had something called the Miranda rights. Any accused had to be told that he has these rights, that he has the right to a lawyer, not to disclose anything which will incriminate him to the police, and so on. And if these rights had not been read out to him, the case could not proceed. Suppose on this technicality, the murderer of your children is let off. Will you still kill him? Even then you will not kill him, because you have realized that it is better to live in a society characterized by law and order, even with occasional lapses from justice, than to live in a society characterized by the chaos of private revenge seeking. Right? Now, I suggest to you that what Mahatma Gandhi was trying to tell us was this. When it comes to resolving issues through due process, well, before I say anything except you, let me just point out to you that according to Gandhi, you have been acting non-violently. When you decided, you were acting non-violently when you decided not to shoot him and hand him over to the police. So we have learned to resolve our conflicts non-violently at the individual level, within a society or a nation. What we need to do, the lesson we need to learn, is to resolve differences at the national level or within a society between major sections of society like labor and capitalists in the same way. We'll have to just backtrack a bit. See the gains of living in a society characterized by law and order. What all is made possible? Our arts, our science, our social organization, our political system, all this is based on that non-violence. I don't want to run down any country, but the difficulties Afghanistan is having in emerging as a settled, calm society may have something to do with the strong tradition it has of revenge taking between tribes. So what Mahatma Gandhi was trying to tell us was that just as the first generation, which decided not to kill the intruder, but to hand him over to the police, had to carry out an act of faith, and I'll explain this in a minute. We also have to carry out an act of faith when it comes to nations. What do I mean by that? This is a society in which everybody has been killing their enemies, right? The intruder comes, you are about ready to kill him, but you realize that there is a leader in your society who has been suggesting that people should not kill each other. They should start legal cases. So you respect this person enough to think that maybe I should try this. So he says, okay, I won't kill him. I'm going to hand him over to the authorities. Now imagine if he escapes. If the accused escapes, won't you feel cheated? I tried to do this and this is what happened to me. And if he is let off, you will feel cheated. At that point, you have to realize your historic role. You'll have to bear this as the price the pioneer has to pay. So it is quite possible that the first people who are trying to introduce non-violent resolution of cases might be people who lose out or run the danger of losing out. But they must have to have the faith of the first generation that what we are doing will produce such beneficial effects in the long run that our sacrifice is worth it. I mean, just imagine. Introducing law and order made civilization possible. Can we imagine that if we learn to resolve our issues through non-violent means, what is possible? To increase the credibility of my suggestion, let me take a hypothetical case with which I will conclude. Let us suppose Germany and England, eve of the Second World War, decided that, okay, we have very strong differences, but we will resolve them non-violently. We will accept arbitration by a third party. We won't go to war. Let us have three scenarios now. That the third party, the arbiter, gave a judgment which many people thought was in favor of Britain. Case one. Case two. It gave a judgment which many people thought was favorable to Germany. Case three. It gave a judgment which people thought was evenly balanced. So in the third case, there is not much of a problem. Both sides are satisfied that we probably did the right thing. But I want to turn to case one and case two. What happened as a result of the Second World War? Germany was devastated. The sex ratio in Germany was horrible because all the young men died. And so on. I don't have to pile up the agony. What happened in Germany? whole city is bombed out. What happened in Britain? It won, but rationing. The number of deaths in the war is said to be 50 million. Half of the dead were on the Allied side, on a rough calculation. What I'm trying to say is that England, and particularly important, Britain lost the empire. If Hitler set out with the goal of conquering England, he failed. But if his goal was to destroy the British Empire, he succeeded. What I'm trying to say is that howsoever adverse the judgment may have been for England, it would not have been as badly off as it was at the end of the Second War. And howsoever adverse the judgment may have been for Germany, it would not have been as badly off as it was at the end of the Second War. And I think this is what the Mahatma was trying to achieve.
Professor Arvind Sharma, it has been a blessing to have you on our show. Thank you so much.
It has been a privilege for me to be on your show. Thank you.
Arvind Sharma.
Bye.